Hey guys, it's Youth Pastor Zack. I'm here with one of our best preachers. Listen, Ethan's here with us. We're so excited to see you guys again. And I know this is a little bit weird, seeing each other over the phone or over your computer or whatever it is. It's a little weird, but we're just in a different time right now. We wanted to reach out to you as a church, officially as a church. I've reached out to a few of you. We miss you guys. I know I'm talking for Barry and Andy also. Man, we miss you guys so much. And while we need to go along with, the governor's request for churches not to gather and stuff, and we completely understand it, man, it's hard. It's hard not to see you guys each week. We miss all of you guys, and we can't tell you how much you guys mean to us. And we're thinking about you guys. We're doing some things to hopefully, whenever we are able to open up, to, be able to come back and be a healthy, safe and clean environment for us all to be back into at the church when that's able to happen. But for right now, we wanted to give you guys another extra little bit of time for Bible study and just a little bit of time alone just to grow our spiritual walk individually. So we want to do this little short weekly Bible study. It'll be 20, 30 minutes. It'll be on a different topic each week. This week, Ethan's starting us off here with a great topic. It's so relevant, and I know it can help a lot of people who may be struggling during this right now. So Ethan, go ahead and kick us off, bud.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about loneliness and isolation and kind of how that plays out for us right now. And we're just kind of in a season right now where many of us are struggling just with the idea of isolation to begin with. And that's something that we have to do during this outbreak. We have to isolate ourselves, isolate our loved ones to protect everyone involved. But for many of us, that's just kind of a totally foreign, weird concept because we're not used to this level of isolation and downtime and confinement. And to some of us, our house feels like it's becoming our prison. But really, this quarantine it's what you make it. And for some people, this quarantine, it's been the big break that they've needed to get stuff done. They've had more time for everything they've always wanted to do, whether that's read or study or learn something new or work on, home projects or whatever it is. But for others of us, this quarantine, it's just a reminder of how lonely we feel sometimes. And the enemy, he uses this quarantine, this time in many of our lives to remind us, that we're all alone, that we're not good enough, that, our life isn't worth living, or, whatever lie he's trying to pierce our hearts and minds with. So there comes a point, that we have to deal with these thoughts of loneliness. And the worst way that you could deal with loneliness is to not deal with it at all. You can't ignore the problem because ignored thoughts become future perspectives. When we keep pushing those problems back, we aren't actually getting rid of them. We're just shoving them to the back of our minds. And it's there that we kind of absorb them into our thinking, and they end up contributing to a bad perspective of life. And that can cause all kinds of other problems for us. So the best way to deal with loneliness, is to deal with it proactively. And there was a study that came out, a few years ago that said the majority of people would rather subject themselves to physical pain than be alone with their thoughts. And that sounds like totally crazy, but I looked into this. This is a true study. They had set up a room, these researchers they set up a room. It was totally empty. They put an electric buzzer in the middle of the room and then another person, the subject, and they didn't give them any reading materials. They weren't allowed to take any electronics in, no music, nothing, just this person and this button in the room with them. And the study found that most of these people, most of the subjects, decided to hit this button and shock themselves. That's what this button did. It was a buzzer. It shocked you. They decided to hit this button because they were so bored. And I think, relating just to our situation now, I think that's why a lot of people, they're still choosing to go outside and gather in places, even though the CDC warns against it, because we just do not want to sit alone with our thoughts. And our society, it's become so accustomed to having so much noise, there's always something to do, somewhere to go, something to see, something to work on. But whether, it's our kids' sporting events or our day job or church or maintaining a social, all these different things, this has kind of just become our little time out from life. And that's just kind of the way that it is right now. But then that begs the question, why don't we want to sit alone with our thoughts? Because you'd think, wouldn't it be a good experience? Wouldn't it be good for some self-reflection and relaxation even? But I think the answer to that is most people are afraid to sit with their thoughts because they are afraid of what they will find out about themselves when they do. We're hesitant to open doors within ourselves that become gateways to greater change, because change a lot of times it's painful. Change, it kind of shocks that status quo in our lives and our minds. And change, it will destroy those comforting illusions that we set up in our lives to make us feel better about ourselves. And many people, they would rather put themselves at risk than watch their illusions be destroyed. But here's the thing, change is absolutely amazing. And instead of looking at things through the lens of loneliness, we can choose to use a better word to define our time alone. And that's the word I like to call solitude. So with that said, I want to hear what you have to say about that, Zach.
Yeah, I love that, that changing the mindset sort of thing. That's something I love to talk about, and I love to hear studies on, because listen, in this time of isolation and feeling lonely or being alone, we can easily get the wrong perspective, and it can take us down a dark path pretty quickly, honestly. When it comes to being alone or an extended period of being alone that we're all unfortunately having to go through, we're kind of forced right now. I often think of it with a seed, because most of I have CF and stuff, and so growing up with CF, I had to spend a lot of time in the hospital. My parents would come by and things, obviously, all the time, and they would spend nights there and stuff. But honestly, as a kid, you didn't really want your parents there. You wanted to be with your friends, and so it was a time of isolation for me for a week or two at a time, and it was hard. But one of the things I always heard people say is, our life, and especially in the Bible, it talks about it, our life is kind of paired with a seed in the Bible. A lot of times it talks about a seed, and it's direct, relative to our life and what our life sometimes goes through. With the seed in the Bible, Matthew 13, Jesus talked about it a lot. A seed is at the same time I'll say it this way, with a bad perspective as a seed, imagining our life as a seed, with a bad perspective, we can take that time of being buried, or we could view it as this time of being planted for more growth, or taking this time and making something useful out of it, instead of focusing on all the the unexpected problems that this crisis has brought along. But we could focus also on the unprecedented opportunities that it also has given us. How many of us have wished for time more extra with our families, time to work on things around the house, and we so often can get our minds focused on the negative instead of the positive. And that's what we're talking about here with the being alone or the solitude. It's completely our perspective. I thought about this whenever I was a kid, and especially here more recently, also as an adult. My brother would aggravate me, but then my wife, she's really good at seeing this stuff too. But those magic eyes, I think that's what they're called, magic eyes, where it's like a pattern on a picture, and it's like a certain pattern of colors, and like you're supposed to look into it and you can see this like amazing picture in it or something. I struggled for like a long time as a kid because I could never see what everyone would see. They would say, there's like this unicorn or there's all kinds of like jumping amazing things in this like still picture, and I just could not see it, and I got so frustrated. So myself, I had to read the instructions because I'm an overthinker. So I need to figure out why everyone else could see this and I couldn't. The instructions tell you that you got to look through what you're seeing, to relax and look through what you're seeing. And so I did this, after reading this, I did it, and I looked at what everyone else was looking at. And whenever I seen this amazing picture as a kid, it was like this like amazing moving like ship, and there was all kinds of cool stuff in it. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I can finally see it. And then I blinked and it was all gone. But I seen it. I see what everyone else is looking at. But the thing is, the point of that is, I had to change my perspective. And what was always there, I could finally now see. With all this thing, everyone being, going through all this together, we're all feeling alone at points. We're feeling isolated. And to an effect, that's good that we're spacing ourselves out and helping helping everybody and those loved ones that are vulnerable. But at the same time, if we look at it with the wrong perspective, it can take us such a dark path quickly. But if we can look at it from the right perspective, there are times whenever you and I can't see why things are happening. There's times that we don't understand why it's happening. There's flat out times we don't like what's happening, whether in this situation or any other situation in life. Even though I can't necessarily always see what God's doing, He is always with us. He's always with us. Even right now, in this moment, you right now looking at your computer or your cell phone or whatever you're on, He's right now with you too. God may have a purpose in the middle of what Ethan called here, and it's true, well, in the middle of what we may feel like is a prison. There may be purpose for you, but our job is to trust and obey and know that, God's a good God. He's got our best at His heart. And we have to look through our circumstances to see what's on the other side and trust that God's got something good for us. That's exactly what Ethan's talking about here with not looking at it as a lonely or alone or any of that, but looking at it instead of a solitude. Ethan, you're right on track, man. What else you got?
Yeah, so I mean, changing your perspective from one idea to the other is really what kind of how you make the most of this whole situation. Changing it from that loneliness, I'm lonely, I'm depressed, I'm down, to solitude. I'm set apart where I can grow. And solitude is different from loneliness because it has a purpose. And when I was kind of gathering my notes for this lesson, I stumbled across the word solitude, and I looked it up in Google and stuff, and the Google dictionary, it gives you a list of, synonyms, and then it gives you a list of related words. And one of those related words was wilderness. And I think biblically, that is the perfect word to describe what we're all going through.
Yeah.
This is one of those wilderness seasons. But, we have to keep in mind that in each wilderness, there is a purpose to be achieved. God's doing something in it. So instead of avoiding our feelings of loneliness, we should confront them. We should, make the most of our growth in this valley. And also keep in mind, it is easiest to get wrapped up in your own mind when you are doing nothing. And this is especially true for those of us, who struggle with depression or anxiety, or maybe you're experiencing grief on some level. That, those of us with loved ones, who have gone, know how hard it is to be at home without them. But here is the good news. If you are moving, then you won't stay in the wilderness for long. You won't be
Yeah,
there forever.
exactly.
It is temporary. And listen, I'm not saying, you got to push yourself till you're so busy, you can't stand it, because remember, this could also be a resting period for some of us. But what I am saying is to do what you can. Do what you can with this downtime, and that looks different for each of us. For some of us, that may just mean reading a book, reading your Bible a little more, praying a little more. And for some of us, that may mean taking on a bunch of projects or whatever. It just depends on the level at which you grow. And, do what you can to grow. Dig deeper into Jesus and give God what is out of your control. The economy, your job status, all those different things that you have literally no control of whatsoever. Those are the things that you hand over to God. The things that are in front of you right now, the things He's given you, those are the things that you can take into your hands, that you can make the most of, and that you can grow in this time with Him right now. But here's the thing, each wilderness serves the purpose of propelling us into revival. And I'm not just talking about, revival of the church or a week-long series of church services. I'm talking about inner revival, because the wilderness, it is the catalyst to greater change, a higher standard of living for Jesus. So with that in mind, we need to be prepared, because true blessings, they come at two different costs: prayer and preparation. So if you're not praying, of course, it's best that you start. And if you're not preparing what you prayed for, then begin as soon as possible, because that is also something, that looks different for everybody. Preparation for inner revival, sometimes it involves multiple things: obedience, surrender, just having a listening ear to God's voice, developing kind of a new work ethic, or just getting ready to receive what you've prayed for, whatever that is. And prayer without preparation, it can just amount to words. And around New Year's, everybody says, new year, new me. Well, truly this year in particular, the new me will begin with this quarantine, this moment of isolation, this moment of solitude. And I love what Lisa Turker, she's one of my favorite authors, she always says, we are not set aside, we are set apart. So when I'm feeling lonely, I remind myself of this, because this reminds me, this isn't just isolation, this is solitude. And solitude works to achieve a higher purpose, to make me into the image of Christ, to set me apart from the image that the rest of the world is taking on. So that's what this is all about, is becoming that image, growing, being set apart, and being made into a more clear image of Jesus. So as we kind of wrap up and as we kind of finish this little study here, let's kind of remember, in our wilderness season, in this isolation, let's work to change our perspectives from that idea of loneliness to solitude, and to take captive all those thoughts of loneliness, of despair that try to steal our minds away. And let's work to make the most of this time that God has given us, to get deeper into Jesus. I think that's all we got, Zach. To everybody watching, I hope you enjoyed this Bible study. And Remember to stay safe, to keep on praying for our world, for each other, for everybody involved in this. And we love you, and we'll see you later.